Hello and welcome. I can see you all coming in. Welcome to this session this afternoon. You're all streaming in now. Wow, look at that. You're all prompt. I always do the same line, but we do have to wait for technology because it basically lets you in one at a time, like going to a football stadium. So I will give this a little bit of time whilst everybody is coming through those turnstiles. But for those of you that are on the call already, one, gold star for being prompt, but two, could you just let me know that you can hear me, you can see the screen? If you could just use the Q&A box for that, that'd be really helpful, because an hour of me talking to myself, nobody needs. So anybody, someone's got to be brave. Yay, there they are. Good. They're either messaging so they can't hear me, or no, you can. Good. Thank you, everybody, for letting me know. Just a little bit of housekeeping for those who are on the call, and welcome to those that keep joining. It seems like a popular session, this one. We are going to be recording this session, and you will get a copy of it to share out with your teams or to listen to again. I will introduce who is joining me today, and obviously, and give you a little bit of background of what we're going to go through. But should we get cut off at any point, should my internet fall over for whatever reason, don't worry, we will restart the webinar. So please just sit tight. You don't need to do anything. We will kick it back into action. Please use the Q&A box that you just used to let me know that you could hear me. At any point, I will be playing Q&A monitor, and if it's relevant, I'll drop it in mid conversation. Otherwise, I'll save them all for the end. But we are online, we are live, so ask us anything. Paul will be very up for taking you through any and answering any of the questions that you may have. A big thanks as well to XU Magazine, who have spread the news of this wide and far. So thank you very much to them. Okay, dokes. So we are here to talk about saving money while you make money. I mean, who can complain about that? That's what everybody needs to be able to do. And to help me with this, I am joined by the very lovely founder of Ookkee, Paul. So Paul, hello. Are you there? You're not a little cartoon person? Yes, hello.
Hello. How are you doing? You right?
Me. Yes, very well, thank you. For those of you that don't know me, I'm one of the directors here at Futurely. I've been here since we took Futurely to market. So we've watched all sorts of accounting firms go through this journey. Paul, do you want to introduce yourself very briefly? I know we're going to talk about the business in a minute, but just introduce yourself to everybody who's joined today.
Yeah, my name's Paul Clarke. My company's called Ookkee. We're an outsourced bookkeeping management accounts firm.
Beautiful. That was like a blind date kind of. My name's Paul, and
I know,
right? Right. Let's just quickly run through the agenda before we get to the nitty gritty of it. There is loads to go through today. We are very likely to go off piste because we often do, but we're really just going to be picking Paul's brains around the journey that they've been through, the challenges they faced, and of course the solution they ultimately landed on. Technology does, of course, underpin this. This is not some big demo. I really want to stress that. This isn't us sitting here going, here, look at Futurely, very much talking about it from an accountancy mindset. However, technology does underpin a lot of the work that Paul and his team do. So we will be going into the platform at the end of the session, but it's from Paul's perspective. We're kind of looking at the core elements of the platform and the pieces that really drive the relationships that they have with their clients. So that's the plan. Whether we stick to it or not is another thing, because we tend to just do what we like in these things, and it's definitely driven by you guys as you ask the questions. Just a bit of background for those of you who don't know who we are. We've been in the market now for 9 years. I was part of the team that took it to market. We very much set up with the mission to level up the playing field for small businesses and enable small businesses of whatever size to be able to have the same insights as the really large businesses. Always being able to look at their cash flow, track how they're performing, and be able to course correct as the results are showing. It was allowed because of the advent of cloud accounting. Obviously, we built our entire business off the back of this lovely, juicy, real-time data that was available. But of course, we recognized very, very quickly that the best source to be able to deliver and support this information is via our accounting partners. So we have always worked with our accounting partners to help them surface that level of insight, that level of advisory services to their small business clients. And it absolutely is our core MO, is to enable you guys to deliver that at scale and at profit to your small business sector. So that's who we are. We've got an advisory platform that underpins it all, that of course we will jump into at the last part of today with Paul's support. Enough about me, enough about us. Let's talk all about you, Paul. And before you start, I want to know, why the name?
No, we started the business about 6 or 7 years ago, and I've got other businesses, and I started it. I came back to finance, to what I did when I left school, and I sort of came back to it with the frustrations of probably the majority of business owners not really being able to get visibility in our numbers. And we started the business and we called it Clifton Company Services. And it doesn't really ring true to kind of how we work with people and how we engage with people. And I sat down with my daughter one day trying to think of another name. I wrote the word bookkeeping down, and obviously Ookkee is in the middle of the word bookkeeping. It's the only word with those 3 consecutive double letters. So it just jumped out at me, and I thought this is a bit of fun, and it's kind of stuck really. So that's where
I
the
always
name
wondered
came from.
if you'd gone, Ookkee, what are we going to do today? That's where I always wondered.
Trust me. One element of regret. It's like every phone conversation, like you have to spell it, you have to say everyone says,
Driving
"Oh,
calls mutually. Honestly, driving calls mutually. We have all sorts of eyes all over the place, so don't worry. But look, talk to us about.
So you feel my pain.
So you kind of talked about the starting, and I think actually your journey to setting this up is as important as the practice today. So kind of take the one step back and that SME lens that you put into the launch of the business.
Yeah, so basically I've still got a few businesses, they're still running, and we've obviously taken businesses to exit. So it was a case of kind of our frustrations, me being knowing about accounts and knowing what the art of the possible was, and knowing how databases work and knowing how the technology worked and understanding it. It was always a frustration to me that I couldn't get deliverable numbers on time. You know, when I'm trying to run a business, I'm not doing that piece of the function. I obviously know about it, but I wasn't running it. And when we're trying to get information from either accountants or even internal, staff, it's like, well, why can't we just see the numbers like really quickly? And probably at the time, with Sage as it was back in the day, there wasn't really that kind of deliverable like insight piece that was available kind of in the new technology environment, like we were expecting it. We all have iPhones at this point. We all have information in the palm of our hands, and nothing was really around to support it. So I thought, right, there's got to be a better way, and that's kind of one of my sort of mantras, if you like. So I was just right, look, we need to be able to do deliverable pieces, get visibility in front of business owners that aren't really accounts or finance driven, not really looking at the numbers to drive their business, don't really have a full understanding of what they want to do. As long as they've got money in the bank, they're happy. When you quiz them on how much of that is theirs, they don't know. So then it's that stuff really. It's giving them some insights and into how they could do it. So then, of course, we started the search to basically find as many cool pieces of software that we could use to app stack together to build a deliverable piece of, like something we could deliver, add value to create a business around. And that's kind of where we're at now. It's taken a little while to get there, but I think that everybody's capable of doing the same work. It's just about how you go about it, and trying to get that. The more I still know, I am fully aware right this second that there are still pieces of information we can deliver that we still can't deliver quick enough. And I know it's available. So it's just a case of like really pushing people like sales, people like Future, and say, look, just pushing and say, look, we know you can get this information. Can we have it? Can we see it? And I think that's then adds value to us as a business when we're putting, in front of a company some insights into their accounts or insights into their business, or when we start talking to them about it, they kind of say what they're looking for. And I know as a business owner, that would have just been absolutely music to my ears. Especially if you tell me you can give me a 3-way cash flow forecast, and mind blown. So I've got lots of use.
I want to pick up on a point that you made there, because I think it's a really valid point. I think accountants, when we first came to market, we brought our first product to market because that was the level of technology at that point. That was the requirements at the point, and that's what we fulfilled, is that need to support the larger of the SME client base that were looking for forecasting and looking for reporting, and the ones that actually moved to cloud first, let's be honest, because 10 years ago we didn't have the massive chunk of clients on cloud as we do today. But and accountants have had to be patient to wait for technology to catch up. And I think, yes, we've now got the latest platform, and yes, what we deliver now through the new version of Futurely does tick all of those boxes, but there's definitely been a transition where accounting firms have needed more than technology was available to give. And I guess as you've gone through this, have you pushed the technology providers, and have you seen that evolution of businesses like Futurely that are now supporting at this scale, this level of scale for advisory services?
And the best thing I can say on that is the ones that have listened are doing better than the ones that don't listen. That's probably the best thing that I can say, because it's all very well and good somebody going off creating a piece of software that they think will go to market, but I think you have to test and get use cases, because otherwise you're not going to have something that's going to tick all the boxes for everybody. And also some people, like, as a punter, you've kind of got to bend as well. You've got to kind of go, well, look, okay, it doesn't do exactly what I want to do, but from the client's perspective, who I'm delivering to, I'm going to be able to give them some amazing insights with. In fact, it does 10 times more things than I hadn't even thought of doing, rather than focusing on the one little thing that it doesn't do that I'd like it to do. So, you can't always have, exactly what you want, but you just massively over delivering them at that point. But then it's how you structure your sort of pricing around that delivery.
I was going to say, that's probably something that we'll come to in a minute, because I think there's an element of an accounting firm's, the level of detail that is wanted isn't necessarily always that's required. So it's about kind of pulling out the core elements to deliver the value that's also achievable in terms of work, the time of the day that you guys have got in order to deliver it. Sometimes there's a desire to give everything, and actually it's very overwhelming from a small business perspective.
Yeah, I think you're right, and I think it's about asking questions to the client, so that you, with your knowledge and advice, can kind of figure out what their metrics need to look like, what their dashboard need to look like, what the key elements they need to look like as part of their numbers, and then it's about delivering that.
Totally. Just talking back to your firm at the moment, so client-wise, what type of clients have you got? How many are you working with now? Give us some juice. What does your portfolio look like?
We're going through, I think we devised a piece at the moment. We do quarterly reviews of our clients. It's quite detailed, adds quite a lot of value to what they've already got, and funny enough, futurely is actually being, kind of intrinsic on how that works at the moment. So, but yeah, so as a mix, we've kind of got, so client-wise, say for example, that we've got about 100 clients, just shy of 100 clients. I got asked this yesterday by one of my staff members, so I didn't know the answer, so I did go look. It's about 97 or something. She's like, "What do you mean you don't know?" Anyway, so because we've taken quite a few clients on recently, and they mix from our ideal client is turning over about £1 million plus profit with say 1 to 10 staff. So they're the ideals. We do deal in that we manage quite a few clients in the care sector, and they can come in groups, so they can have 400 or 500 staff, and the turnovers it can be a lot larger, and we need to do quite a few more pieces of work in those sectors, and again futurely allows us to deliver a lot of the reporting that is required for that sector. There's quite a lot of non-financial data that needs to be required and things like that. So that's really important into how they need to report. So that's quite a large chunk of what we do. Obviously, we're into the manufacturing sectors, also construction, and we do like e-commerce platforms as well. So we've got a very broad mix, but ultimately we keep things simple. We use the same app stacks. We kind of move people into that line. We're not afraid of getting people to change, but we help manage that change, and then we help them just realign them. So everything I've done in my working life has been about efficiency. So I've always worked to be more efficient, and that's kind of how we help our clients.
And how does, final question on this one, I promise, before we get into the detail, but how do you think your lens as a small business owner or multiple business owner changed the way that you've approached the accounting firm?
So I tell you what, it really helps with getting clients, obviously, because I'm in the same boat as them, and I'm not going to them as somebody who's only ever worked in practice or only ever had a practice. So it kind of helps me to build a bond. And that gives me a better insight into, as soon as they say a trigger, or they've got a little bit of a feeling about something they don't like, or whether it's to do with a communication, or they don't speak to people enough, or whatever it may be, I can empathise with that instantly, and I'll feed back off of that. So without creating them and us, because we work really closely with accountants to help them to deliver the same information in work, and it's key. Part of what we do is helping to kind of keep that relationship alive and keep them having a client, because they might not want to talk to them as often as we do, and generally we're a filter for quite a lot of stuff, so we can manage most things. So it works really, really well. And also when they're asking for information, we know what they want. So when they ask for it, we know exactly what they want. We can then get the right information and hand it over. So it greases a lot of wheels, where we're sat in this space. But yeah, that's where I'd suppose
Do you think
my experience helps.
Did it also distill your offering down? As we talked about before, as this, all the information that's wanted, all the information that could potentially be available. Has it helped you focus your offering into being really clear, easy to price, easy to manage, easy for your teams to be able to talk to their clients about it?
100%. I think that's it almost sometimes having restrictions within software, or having restrictions within your offering is helpful. You can't do everything, and you've got to say no to the things that you can't or don't want to do. So that's really sort of funnels it into really nice, easy segments to manage. And then that's when it starts to become something that can grow exponentially. So that's why it works really, really well for us.
Good. Okay, let's talk about the team, because I think this is a really, no, excuse our canoeing, although you did tell me you're taking your team canoeing, so it feels very relevant.
It's absolutely perfect. We're going kayaking next week.
Yeah, exactly, perfect. Yeah, kayaking, sorry, that's different. I don't know what the name is. Open top, single hole, who knows. Anyway, the building the culture, because I think it's all very well driving. You want to set up this type of practice, you want to be very focused on giving insights. How do you filter that down across your teams and across your employees and across the accountants that you do also work with?
So it's also got its challenges. I think, we have a mix of staff that have come to us from different backgrounds. Some have worked within industry, and some have worked within practice. Okay. And some have gone down the line of, ACCA, and some have gone down the line of FEMA. So for us, within our scope, if you like, we like management accountants. That's where we want people that have worked with, had a business owner, badgering them for numbers all the time, and kind of wanted to get that information. And then it's like, for their fulfillment, it's trying to get them to kind of understand they're on a journey with that business owner. So the relationship building between them and the business owner, which is why we want to understand the goals and the aspirations of all of our clients that we work with. And this is part of the thing we're working through at the moment, is to get like a full alignment and get our team on board with their team. So it's like one big team. Then everyone's pulling in the right direction, because we see quite a lot of information. Sometimes we can give people a heads up, or like spot, if something slips through the net, we might pick it up. And I think if everyone's got that linear thinking and that reticular acuity, then it's always in the mix. People are like, that's really important to us. And of course, if the companies have success, then the guys here they enjoy that success as well.
Is there a challenge, particularly with bringing accountants in? Because we've seen this challenge before in our own firms, where there's a desire to problem solve immediately in client meetings. And is that a kind of principle that you've driven within your own teams, that you don't have to be the font of all knowledge and the solution bringer at that point in time, that it's very okay to go, look, there's a flag, we need to go and deal with it, I'll go and find out and I'll revert. How have you driven that sort of behavior? Because that's always a fear with some of our firms that are looking to do more and more advisory. They want to know all the answers and all the numbers, and being able to be so tight on the data that's in front of them. You almost get paralysis by analysis. So how have you stopped that sort of challenge?
It's so you're right. And that's, I think at the moment, I think the fear of failure in anything is really, really high at the moment. I think a lot of people want to have everything perfect. And I think, try, test, fail, try again seems to be the way to go. And I think, our clients, because we've got such a good relationship with them, they're on that journey with us, and we'll say, well, let's just try it, see what happens. If it works, okay, we've tried. And I think that's the way we have to review everything. Obviously, if we're delivering numbers, it's the kind of difference between, what we're talking about in, I suppose, what you're talking about in compliance and what you're talking about in advisory. One is, I suppose the best way I can kind of picture it in my mind is like math and English, right? So maths is an answer, English you can write forever, okay? Yeah. So with compliance, you've got numbers you can deliver. With advisory, where do we stop? Okay, so it's finding those places to stop in advisory, I think, and in that piece where you've got to just pigeonhole it. It's why we do draw quite a lot of lines in what we do. We deliver a TV, we don't do compliance. Yeah. So that goes to the accountant. With advisory, we don't do advisory. we use Futurely to do a piece of administration and deliver numbers. We're here to churn numbers out for people to deliver advisory. So we work, with CFOs and accountants to deliver that information to their clients because they've got the skills there.
That's the piece I'm really interested in, that relationship between you're obviously generating these numbers, the reports, the insights, and then how do you ensure that culture that you have in yours goes through to the accountant, to then for the client to have that seamless experience and the experience that you would want them to have?
Yeah, that's the tough bit. So fortunately, we, from the people we've been working with, the fact that, because often accountants are reliant on the client delivering numbers for them to work with, and as soon as they start scrutinizing, they realize it's an absolute bag of spanners, or it could be better.
Yeah.
So that's the point when all faith is lost and there's not even a deliverable there. So you can't advise on poor numbers. Me championing bookkeeping is like the most fundamental piece of the accounting process is right, because if that's wrong, everything else is wrong. So
yeah, of course, it all starts there.
Exactly. So I think that's for me where I really enjoy that piece, if you like. So when we've got that going on, and then we get to the point, what's exciting for us is when we get to CFO and accountant, he really drives us to some numbers and really wants to get the information out of us, and we can deliver it.
Yeah, nice.
They're blown away. And then what we've got is kind of also people where we'll have people that are like, oh, I'm not quite sure you can get this information for me. Send it over to me and I'll put it in a spreadsheet. I'm like that. No, I'm not, sorry. Tell me what you need, and we'll deliver it to you. And then because I don't want my client, who's our client between us, if you like, but I don't want my client to pay you to waste your time on faffing around with a spreadsheet when we can just deliver you the numbers, do what you're being paid to do, what you're good at. Because from a business owner, I'd be very frustrated if that was the case. So I kind of share that same thought, but I think, right, look,
you want to pay for their expertise, don't you? And actually you don't want to, and I think the challenge before technology was that advisory was expensive because it required the time to set up the insights, to find the data, to collaborate, to correlate the data, to make sure it's right, to pull it into graphs and charts. That piece is all gone now, which means that actually what the client's paying for is the bit they really value, which is the expertise, which is in the head of that advisor, the years of experience, the multitude of businesses they've worked alongside, their insight on the numbers and the ability to play with numbers. That's what we want them. That's what, as a business owner, for.
Yeah, we'll get work off the back of somebody going in to see a client and going, well, I can't see the wood for the trees here. They've got 3 businesses. They want consolidation. Each business is in a separate accounting platform. How can we pull that together? So we're like, right, you're gonna have to change everything. Yeah. We'll get everything onto one accounting platform, then we can consolidate it all in Futurely, then you can have whatever you want, right? So it's like mind's blown for a lot of people, and it's kind of like, oh, you can do that? You're like, yeah, give us we'll probably be like 2 weeks to a month to get that turnaround for you. And they're like blown away. So that's why it's like for us to hit deliverables. And the reporting structure you've got in there now is just off the scale. Good. So good.
I like the teaser. You're building everyone up to it. And I also have to change this slide because I feel like I'm being hypnotized by these gentle rowers. So sorry for anybody else on their session.
I feel a bit seasick.
I know. If anybody either feels seasick or like they need to have a quick Red Bull, please go and grab one. But look, you keep referencing it. And I think this is important. It's just, you've probably covered it a lot, but what process did you go through when you were looking at something that was going to provide you with a level of insights, and what really stood out for you? I appreciate that now you've got a really in-depth knowledge of Futurely, but at that beginning point, at that choosing point, what was it that made it stick out for you?
I'll be honest, I'm going to be totally honest with you here. So you might not like it, but I'm going to be.
Oh, God. So I might need a gin, let alone a Red Bull.
So the thing that got me onto this, first of all, was flow.
Okay.
Flow. That blew my mind. I was like, that is perfect. Giving people a realistic insight into their numbers. Like, you can put a profit and loss in front of someone and a balance sheet in front of someone, they're going to look at it. But if you tell them if their top 5% of the suppliers paid 5 days earlier, they've got an extra 50 grand in the bank, that means something, right? Yes. And if that means that they've got to take a bit of action, they'll do it, right? Showing them all the other numbers that it's not going to affect a business owner's way of thinking this business. If you position an insight in such a way that it's going to add value or provide a use to them, then of course that's brilliant. So that's what first brought my mind to, okay, cool, that's great. That's the sort of insights I would have loved. Mm-hmm. How do we put more of those in front of people And then I was speaking to another guy one day, and he was talking to me about, I think there's loads of like cockpit references or whatever, but it's basically around dashboards and basically around metrics and around dials and what to look at. And if you can just give them a profit and loss in a balance sheet, you can give them some variances, you can give them all this other stuff. But if you give them some headlines of like, this is your rolling back liability that's coming up, keep an eye on that. This is your rolling tax liability, keep an eye on that. And it's these things just constantly in their eye line that they look at once a month, rather than a big list of numbers that they just literally go blind at when they look at it.
And I think
it's just keeping them focused on those top line things that they need to see.
And I think that's really important, in the same way that you introduced the software with those and liked what you saw with those top level, the kind of easy insights, kind of core KPIs. It's the same experience when you're introducing insights to a small business, isn't it? Starting with those simple, the kind of real attention grabbing KPIs. For those of you on the call, by the way, Flow is inside Futurely, so we are going to show you. We had it as a separate product, but it now sits within inside Futurely, so it's still there. It's just now just called Futurely, and it's part of the bigger platform.
Yeah,
but it does just that. It looks at the short-term cash. It looks at immediate insights. It looks to enable you to go, to then let you as the advisor, or of course your small business, start to want to dig deeper and start to want to look further, rather than just a full P&L with some variance. What do you do with that? How long did the process take you in terms of looking and then also onboarding? Because I think, look, time is very precious for accounting firms and bookkeeping firms, let's be honest.
Yeah.
They could all do with an extra 50 hours in a day. How painful was that process of choosing it and then ultimately onboarding into it?
So obviously we're still using both platforms at the moment. And are you talking with regards to Futurely as a whole?
No, Futurely, the latest.
Or how we deliver it?
Just
okay.
Yeah, sorry.
How we deliver it at the moment, because obviously we're not using it for donkeys. So, but as we use it at the moment, so right this second, if I even use like a use case from today, so we've got a quarterly delivery platform that we do to realign the scope of our clients and also to engage them and find out what their current goals, challenges, all the other things are around their business. And the kind of the latest thing that we're doing is just plugging them all into Futurely and saying, have you had a look at this? And the use case I've got is one of the guys has said, right, one of my goals is, and this isn't like, I don't think it's the best advice, but this is what he wanted. He said, look, I want to get £1 million in the bank. That's what I want. Okay. So we'd already plugged in Futurely, and I just rolled forward with the cash flow based on Predict, and I went January 27. And he went,
job done.
How have you done that? How have you done that? And I'm thinking that's just epic. It gives you insight. But he was like, well, I want it before that. Fair enough. So, but look, it gives them like an insight into.
We could use the platform.
Yeah. Exactly, but I think that absolutely blew his mind. Bearing in mind he's in tech, and it absolutely blew his mind. So I was like, this is the sort of level of stuff we'll be able to deliver now, and keep track of for you, see how you are getting towards your targets, and keep that accountability with you.
That story sums up what I'd hope you'd say, but I was not trying to lead you to say, is that, look, this is not our first gig in the advisory space. We had our first platform, which is coming up to 10 years ago. We recognize that with the evolution of accounting firms, the larger portfolios of zero clients and cloud clients, the larger demands that SMEs, because SMEs have become educated. COVID definitely helped with that, making them recognize the importance of looking at their numbers. If we can find a silver lining, that was probably it. And we recognize that actually, in order to support the accountants, which is what I said at the beginning is our core driver, to deliver it to as many of their SMEs as possible, we had to have it as plug and play usability. We needed it not to require hours of training. We needed you simply to connect and go, oh, look, here we are, here's some insights. And then you can go off and do the deeper diving and get the things really, really tight. But 100%. You answered it well, because that's the point. If you've got a client that suddenly appears on the doorstep, you can still trust Futurely, plug in, get some instant insights, and be able to build the conversation off the back of that. And that's exactly what we wanted. And anyone in the team could pick it up. And in fact, I did a webinar last week. There's another bookkeeping firm actually. And I asked her straight out how long it took her to learn the latest platform. And she said, I was an absolute wizard within half an hour. And so that's the kind of
to learn it. Yeah, no time.
It's super, and it's designed to work like that, so people don't get stuck in certification programs. They're of software of old, and we don't want firms to have to go and say, yeah, there's 20 hours of product training in that one.
I think training's overrated. I think I find that whenever someone comes to me and goes, right, okay, I'll say, here's into the team, I go, here's Futurely. They're like, okay, we know what it is, we understand what it does. Can you give some training? I'm like, no, not at all. I said, you need to have a use case first of all, and then you need to go and find what you need to deliver, right? Because I can't teach you everything, so there's no point. So until you've got a use case,
it will present what they need. And you're right, find we've got a client that needs this, just go and plug in. It will lead you around to find the areas that you need to utilize, which again, I'll show you at the end of this with Paul's help. I mean, we've talked about some clients, but let's talk about, you have got a care home client, which is actually a really great story, and I think will help bring everything to life. Do you want to just kick off? I mean, you picked up this client in an interesting way. They were in all sorts of trouble, weren't they? So take us on the full journey.
Yeah, well, actually, okay, it's the full journey. The clients came to us via an accountant. They got referred into us because they knew we had care home experience, and they came to us because they wanted us to put some eyes on a forecast that had been done for them by. So the bank had come in because they'd gone into CQC kind of special measures and they needed some help. And then so the bank came in. The bank employed I can't really, if I allude to how top sort of level this accountancy firm was. So top 25 has been top 25 accountancy firm kind of came in, and they got brought in to do a piece on to help them out. They charged 25 grand to come in and do a forecast. But when I looked at it, it wasn't fit for purpose. It wasn't specific to the care industry at all. And it didn't really fulfill the bank's needs. So the bank were worried about the situation. So we got brought in by their accountant who said, Paul, can you give it a once over? We looked at it and I could just instantly see what was wrong with it just because of my knowledge of the sector. And I said, look, we can put something together for this. And I think that part of that money was to help the monitoring going forwards because of all the spreadsheets. And it was quite a ridiculously put together spreadsheet. But anyway, we basically redid the forecast using Futurely, put in the right metrics and parameters. And we did that it took like less than half a day. And I think we charged like 450 quid or something about a couple of years ago. And then, yeah, because there wasn't a lot to change and we already were plugged into the data. So when we pulled that data through and then we said, well, look, that's done now. It's just a case of monitoring it for you. And the information was delivered to the accountant who was then, he said, actually, I need to do a spreadsheet that does this and this for the bank. So what we actually did was create a report in Futurely that did the same thing he was going to do. So the piece of work every month, because it needed to do monthly, it was a CFADS report, so a cash flow against debt servicing report. So we did that within Futurely, presented it to the accountant who gave it the once over and then sent it off to the bank. And they were well within, our special measures within 12 months, because that was the timeline, but it was out within like 3 to 4. It was ridiculous. So they could see, because they didn't have good financial information initially, when we took it over, we tidied that up, pulled the forecast forward and got it through. And we helped them to try and get their money back from the accountant as well, because they'd been overcharged. So it was an interesting time, but I think it felt like, I think the feeling was the ship's sinking, put some charges in. Which is, got this.
And I also think, whatever that accounting firm's approach, which is disappointing, but also how technology can completely revolutionize the client's insights. So back to why we launched Futurely, we wanted to level up. And that's not, the reason that big top 25 firm, I nearly said it then, that top 25 firm put that price tag on it was because they were still using spreadsheets and doing it the traditional way, which is so restrictive to those smaller clients who actually you've proved in less than an hour or so, a couple of hours work at an affordable price, that client, that small business could transform the way that they run. And it's just a perfect example of the world that we should be moving into to give these small businesses access to that information at the right price. 100%. And also firms will benefit too, because that is still money in your pocket. It's not going into a top 25 firm. The client's got access, you've got an ongoing relationship, and the care home today is still fine.
Yeah, they're actually expanding it. So it's gone completely the other direction, because they didn't have visibility. They had an in-house person looking after the finances. When it was given to us, we sort of got it shipshape pretty quickly, and then started to feed the data, and obviously
amazing.
they've had help from other advisors. But yeah, it was just a massive sort of step change for them as well. Getting that, they went from like that dread and fear feeling to like that excited and oh my god, we're actually okay feeling. And it's like
giving people control, isn't it?
We're not talking about a small care home here, so like there's a lot on the line. It's an 80-bed care home with 80 residents with over 100 odd staff, and it's like people's jobs and people's homes, really at the end of the day. So it's quite a lot in it really. So it just saved the day really. It was brilliant. So I think that was kind of it's just from my perspective, creating visibility of the numbers and using them correctly. That's it. There's no.
And to your point, making a forecast reflective of that sector and reflective of that business and the objectives that business has got set out, or the challenges they have to compete with, not just a standardized, this is what we think is going to happen. Yeah. Just looking at the whole of your client base, is there a level at which you don't provide this level of insight, or do all clients get to have some sort of visibility?
To go that everybody's going to get this because we're going to use it as our reporting facility. But at the same time, tell me one business owner that doesn't want to know about cash flow. From the back of COVID, well, it's not like they go, "Oh, that's a nightmare." To get somebody to do cash flow, that's an absolute nightmare. That's going to take loads of time. It's like, actually, guys, it's not. It's there. We need to just do like two things for you. If you're not already doing them yourselves, and if you're doing them yourselves, do it our way. So we're going to be able to deliver the same thing. It's just available now. So you just got to plug the software in, and we're good to go. As long as it's explain to you what you're looking at, it's there.
I'm going to ask you the pricing conversation now, because everyone will be thinking it. So pricing wise, how do you include this? What do you have? You don't have to reveal your numbers, but how do you have a fixed monthly amount and then you do project work on top? Do you have tiers that people can come in at? How do you model your pricing? Because I want all firms to do what you're doing, because it's amazing. And the amount of insight you're giving to SMEs is just incredible. But how did you do it so it's profitable?
So basically, obviously, we offer an entire service end to end. And part of this piece, which is what we're calling cash flow admin, is really because realistically, once you plug the software in, it connects and does its thing. And using the Predict software, it's pretty good. Gives you the assumptions and everything like that. So if you want to do anything above that, that's extra. The way we don't necessarily want to do that work. We don't want to create their budget. What we want to do is lead them through the process of understanding what costs make up their business. So we'll help them to come up with the ideas for their budget. So there's a one-off fee for doing like a budget, a one-off fee for doing a scenario. So depending on really the kind of size involved, we were doing like a fixed fee for a budget, which is just a 12-month forecast.
Okay.
P&L. It then be between sort of 350 and 750, depending on rough turnover size. It's just in-go proposal, so we just tick the boxes and it gives us the price. And then with a scenario builder, that's a little bit more involved, a lot more balance sheet work and cash flow kind of elements to it. So that can be anything from sort of 450 to sort of 1500 quid. But realistically, a lot of the time, we are just steering the software. We're given the information by the CFO, we're given the information by the accountant, we're given the information by the client. We plug it in. That's why it's a one-off fee, because once it's there, we're good for 12 months. Because all we're doing for 12 months is delivering a report with the actual versus
tracking performance against it. Yeah, of course you are.
Right, that's it. So once that's done, however, like with most forecasts, everybody wants like their planning forecast, if you like, and also their real-time forecast, their 13-week short-term cash flow. And that's where Tracker comes in brilliantly, because then what we can do is use our cash flow admin, which is basically keeping your bank rec up to date, making sure that all bills are planned for future dates, and making sure that all credit control is running as well. So those pieces that we add on, provided with keeping the credit control expected payment dates in, that's going to keep them ahead of time, dealing with that side of it. So those two pieces, whether we're doing it or the client's doing it, just make the clients conscious they're doing their credit control. So we should make sure you get your dates in, and they're also pre-planning their payment dates. They're already doing it themselves. So all I can offer them was the budget, and they're looking to expand, so that'll probably come. So it's literally, those are the three pieces that we would do, and that's from the get-go. You need to do that from day one, because otherwise it's really difficult to note the starting point, and everyone's got to be explained that is the unreconciled balance, essentially. So it's a straightforward process. They understand it. they get us to do it, and that then allows us to add those things. And obviously we price that work transactionally. So depending on how many.
I think the fact that you've got real clarity over that what you do offer, what you don't offer, you stay in your lane, it keeps it really clear, it keeps it really simplistic. The clients know what they're getting, the clients know what the service is, they know when to ask for more, but equally you also know when you want to pass it on to the accountant who can then deliver the next level of work. It works really, really well. And it works really, really well for you as a practice, let's be honest, because those arrows are going up for a reason. So just give us kind of headlines of the outcomes that you've seen as a result of this.
So, well, at the moment, the engagement is 100% when we share it them. So it's it can't really get any better than that. So for us, it's about just getting in front of the client and actually being able to deliver it. And a while when we first started this again a while back, we talked to an accountant, and we were looking at delivering data, and he used the word, I need meaningful data. That's it. So accurate, meaningful data. So that was one of the things that sort of rings in my head.
Yeah.
Preach to the team, one, it's accurate. Two, what does it mean, right? So by doing that, it engages them and they want it. So it's not a case of, I've got a very good friend of mine, Benjamin, that talks about sales, and it's like, there's no point selling something to somebody they don't want, but when you can demonstrate to somebody they want it, you don't need to sell it to them. They're going to have it, right? So it's a very straightforward way of thinking about it. So yeah, it's such a no-brainer. It's ridiculous. So yeah, it's helped us to, and obviously with every single one of those clients that we've engaged with, they've then asked us to do the credit control and do the payment services for them, and that's extra work all the way along. So that's helped us to kind of increase our fees on that piece. So yeah. I mean,
you've basically increased fees, haven't you? You've seen great growth, and the growth is continuing to ramp up. So it did it during COVID, and even in tricky markets like we're in now, it's still continued to grow. And client satisfaction is high because you get so many referrals, don't you? And that's kind of the flywheel that is working, particularly in the care home sector. As you said before, you're picking up those clients because, of course, you're getting that name, that branding at being able to deliver the ultimate service in that space, which stops you having to find new clients. They're turning up on the doorstep.
Well, I think, if you, what do they say? Something like 90% of businesses have like 90% of their work come through referral, but no one's really got a strategy.
They reckon, I don't know this is, I heard for accounting firms last week, it's 81% of business for accounting firms comes through referrals. But again,
and they probably don't have a strategy for managing referrals. That's the thing. So, how do they, if you just said, hey, refer a friend, right? 80% of your existing client base were referred in. So they're going to refer. Yeah, what's your net promoter score? You need to do all that stuff. There's a ton of stuff in that mix as well. So that's a
whole different session from this. Today,
a whole other session.
That's a whole other one. This one we're going to just talk about. We're going to jump in because I'm conscious of time. I'm going to go into the platform, and for those of you on the call, this is not some. I think I said it in the headline. It's not some click here, click here. This is what we do. We really want to bring this to life with Paul's help, really. So, for those of you who haven't seen Futurely, this is the new platform, by the way. So Futurely works in a really, really clever way. And I think back to what we talked about scaling before, we thought about our accounting firms when we were building this, and we thought about how we can aid you to scale. And one of the ways that we can do that is by generating instant data that's accurate, that is also forward looking. That's actually quite challenging because prior to this platform, you had to choose to forecast either from the P&L or forecast from the invoices and bills. There wasn't any mechanism for joining those two things together. So we did, because that means there's nothing missing. So what we did in Futurely is actually bring all due invoices and bills that are sitting in the ledger in as part of the forecast data, and then we build our own predictions out against the P&L. What's clever about the way that we predict on the P&L, again, to get that level of accuracy that Paul was talking about before, you want to be able to trust it, to be able to plug in, go to a meeting and go, look, this is first draft, this is where you're heading. What we do on the P&L is we go and look at all the historical transactions on every account line. We then analyze each of those transactions, and we look at, it's about 150, I'm not going to list them all, but we look at, payment type, is it an invoice, is it cash, is it a journal movement, should we ignore it from the cash flow, who is the customer behind it, how often do they pay, how often does this transaction appear, is it an anomaly, is it an inflated from the previous transaction? There are so many different things that we comb every transaction through. in order to create the model for the future transactions. It gives us around 86% accuracy on first plugin, and it happens within 3 seconds of connecting the ledger up to Futurely. And so you have a 3-year view off into the distance that you can then start to have those conversations around. And I'm going to come to you in a sec, I promise, Paul, but this is what we're sitting on at the moment, the daily tracker. This is the instantly created forecast that we were just talking about. And Paul, what do you use this bit for? I'm going to come to all areas. What do you use it for in your client meetings, either on first engagement or ongoing engagement?
First engagement, when we show them, we'll have it plugged in and we won't do any work on it whatsoever. And we'll come to it and say, look, this is what this is capable of doing. Okay, showing you your, and they're like intrigued. They're like, okay, well, the questions like, you know, how does it work? What does it do? And they're like, right. So the first point is we go to that cash balance and say, that is your unreconciled cash balance at the top. So if that was all fully reconciled and all the bills are paid, and then that would be your cash balance. So that's great. So we're doing all right in this instance, so great. So then what we look at is invoices and bills, and we explain to them that anything in the invoices and bills section, if it's highlighted in green or in pink, is happening today. And that's unrealistic. So that's where we want to manage their expected payment dates in Xero normally. Generally, if we only use this piece that you're looking at now, is if they've got some sort of payment plan or splitting bills down. Ideally, we want all that information and administration to be done in Xero so that it can be managed as part of workflow rather than as independent checking.
I think that's a really good point. We've got both mechanisms. If it gets updated in Xero, we'll pull in that due date or expected date. So we pull in expected date first. If there's no expected date, we pull in due date from the ledger software.
Yeah.
But
that's how we explain it.
It's in here. No, it's fine. Yeah, I understand what you're saying. But it's also in here if you want to do quick modeling. To your point, it's really useful, that ability to bounce forward bills. What happens if we don't want to pay these bills for a month? Does that get us through the cash flow headache that we have at the moment? But on first meet, you flash down this and basically look at those that are green and pink and then start the conversation around short-term cash.
Start the conversation about how we sell them payment services and credit control. Yes, but ultimately, we kind of get that into a place where they sort of understand it. So once they've got that information, it's like then we start talking. Then we click onto the sales tab, and this is a great piece I went through yesterday with a client, and we went into the sales tab. And he said, because he was talking to me about, he had 2 kind of lines of product, and he said, we're going to be reducing this line of product over the period going forward, and we're going to be increasing this line. So it's 2 separate nominal codes. Okay. So we jumped into, so if you jump into predict and click on for the assumption, so it gives you your assumptions on how the prediction has been based, and the prediction for the item that was declining, it said, based on the last 2 years and the current information, we're going to continue a 3% reduction in prediction. Because he went, oh, that's about right. I was like, okay, that's cool. And then we clicked on the next one and it said it's a 9% increase. And he went, yeah, that's about on target for what we're after. So he was just blown away that the prediction with us doing no work whatsoever.
And I think to your point before, that ability of being able to plug in ready for a meeting and not having to comb through everything before a meeting and try and get all the answers, the software there to give you the answers, and any predicted number that we have across any area of the app, you can click on to produce that information that we were just talking about there. So it's just providing the rhetoric, the justification for this instant forecast. And it is on the caveat, this is your first look at the year ahead. This is like our straw man view. Let's now talk about it, build goals around it, and get your own insights into that. But ultimately, this is how your business looks like it's tracking for the period ahead. Now, of course, for him, I'm guessing.
Also, so I was going to say, even if because when you plug in from day one, you've also got to say, like you said about before, it doesn't have to be right. You've got to give them that. No, it doesn't have to be right at all. You've got to say, look, this is what it could be, but at the moment it's this. This is what's showing right now, and it's because this, and this. Because you know what it's not going to show, right? So then you can start to fix it and.
I have some of my clients that use these. So these are your typical P&L, balance sheet and cash flow statements. They use those for their first comb through to see if there's anything fundamentally wrong, because that tends to, particularly with experienced eyes, pop out the areas that need focus. But equally, other of my firms do exactly what you did, which is sit and just go through the P&L individually, looking at the predicted line, looking at the explainer behind it. And then if you don't like it, you can toggle it on and off. And I know that you guys do utilize this, but it's so easy to be able to build in additional forecast assumptions. There's many different methods of doing it: freestyle, type in your own, repeating entry for either building out growth models or just a repeating payment. Unit, it's a new addition to our world, but 50 units at 10 quid, you can build refunds in, you can build price rises in. And then, of course, the formula builder that lets you reference the entire chart of accounts that's sitting in here from historical data or any of your forecast data sets to be able to build out a typical, what you would usually build in Excel, but a formula to create a prediction. Which is your preferred method?
Exactly the same. So, but two really depends what we're doing. In this area, I don't tend to do much. I leave predict alone. So if we would use this, what we're doing here in scenario builders. So again, if they want a 5% increase in growth, then you can look at last month, last year, and pull in that, and then go times 5% or whatever. That's brilliant. I like the also being able to put it in to manually key it in or repeating. It all depends on the type of thing that it is. It could be just a subscription that you're repeating. So that's easy.
Exactly.
And what we do like, one of the things that we like the most is when, like, you've got, say, a client and they say they're just box shifting or they're e-commerce. They say, look, well, we've got a sales target. And we go, okay, look, what margin do you make? Because then you're instantly pulling the cost of goods sold. So you can do a calculation on the sales figure. So every time they tweet the sales figure, the cost of goods sales figure changes, as you would in a spreadsheet. So then if you start to filter it like a spreadsheet and go, well, actually, everything's driven from my top line number, then it will. Exactly. And you can work it from bottom up as well. So,
well, of course you can. And I think the upside of this is, again, getting out of spreadsheets. I absolutely, there's a place for spreadsheets. I was in a spreadsheet before this, but the upside of financial reporting and modeling and predictions and all the tracking is that if you're feeding off other areas of this, which feeds from the ledger, it stays up to date. It maintains itself. It is always looking at the right data sets and will evolve month and month and day on day or week on week, depending whatever is the period that you're looking at. So it just becomes a living, breathing forecast rather than one which potentially, when it's sitting in a spreadsheet, isn't living and breathing. I'm just going to
meaningful data.
Yeah, exactly. I'm just going to flash the performance pages to pick up on something you said before and chip in wherever you like on this one. But again, I'm conscious of time. These are the out of the box pages. So when we were talking before about those top line, that flow piece of being able to grab those headline KPIs for your first meeting, these performance pages do just that. They're pre-built. You don't have to build them in the app. They're there. They're ready to go. They're fully populated with all data sets. And you can see across the top the areas that you can dive into. Overview, so many of my firms use this for what you were talking about before, pulling out the core areas of which you can add value. And then you can even, if you focus on things like net profit, start to do a value prop. Look, you're running at X. What happens if we made you X amount more? How would you feel about that? Well, then there's your charge. That's the positioner that you've got in order to justify and be able to get them to understand how working together is going to be profitable for them. I do have firms that use this on first entry in, because this again starts to show our expenses and cost of sales beginning to outweigh income. How is that impacting the cash? So those charts on that overview page, depending on the type of firm you are, will enable you to look across the entire business and pull out the core information, including things like VAT liability. The cash flow performance pages are the same, just deep diving into the cash flow. One of the pinch points, the high and lowest cash points, what are the biggest invoices that are outstanding, what proportions are running late, which accounts are bringing in the most, and the same exactly on the suppliers. So you've got those levers that are built around the cash flow that, of course, you can then start to have conversations around. We've got the same on the P&L and balance sheet. I am going to come to you in a second, Paul. You're not off the hook yet. Don't worry. I just thought I'd flash through it. So in the P&L and balance sheet pages, again, they're created out of the box. You don't need to do anything, but at your fingertips, you've got variance pieces. So how is the P&L performing last month, last financial year, across that P&L? And you've got exactly the same across the balance sheet as well. Plus, you've got some core ratios in there. Again, just to start driving the conversations, the various conversations that you're having. But probably, Paul, customers and suppliers you're a fan of, or certainly have bumped into and gone into, because so many of our firms love this. It's possibly the most simplistic area, but we pull in all of the customers and suppliers that sit behind the P&L. And in here, you can sort them by their type, the amount due, the average sales, dependency ratios, all of those bits and pieces. And you can even click in and dive into looking at risk factors. And from a risk perspective, we manage that because we look at the transactional data coming in. We can see if a transaction is beginning to get slower and slower at being paid. And of course, that then starts to flag that is there a challenge in that customer or that supplier, if they're, we're paying them later, do we need to go and pick it up and have that conversation? So there's loads sitting in this area, isn't there, Paul? And I guess to summarize, how do you best use this bit of the app?
So the more of that, the better, right? So trends is brilliant. And this is the sort of stuff because it's kind of actual data. Okay, it's not some of the bits are forecast and predicted, but a lot of it's actual data. We're starting to utilize. So we've increased our reporting, our sort of management report costs, or have an option for this based on if they require it or not. So, but the good thing about the reporting part of this now is that all of this is available in reports that
Yes.
we can automatically send out once a month, and it's automated. So like that piece for us, again, it's just adding more value to what we're doing by giving those insights or displaying them to them. Yes, they can log in. Yes, they can look at it, but we sent it them and we're going to touch base on it at some point. So it's just to check in with them and make sure that if anything flag, because everyone has a client manager, so the client managers will use it as well to just flag anything and raise it as a point. But they're getting sent automatically now. So that's just, again, why.
Exactly. And I think back to when we were
just, again, more meaningful.
When we were building this reporting area, obviously we had reporting in our first product, we were really new and understood the workflows of accountants. So in here, you can build your own, of course you can, and you can have them as printable PDFs, or of course you can have dashboards which are shared live, really useful kind of flash reporting. But we've also built the templates because we want to make it as easy as possible to get up and running. So you can sort them, you can go and then choose one. And if you've got your client, you just simply go and select on the template that you want to use. That template will then load and it will pre-populate with all of that data for that particular client, looking at those KPIs that were on that template. But then you can also update these templates, you can change the charts and graphs, you can add additional information in, and it's so easy to keep adding to these. Again, so you can have your standard one that goes out to all of your clients, that is like your core, there's our cash flow offering, that's the basic one. And then as you start to scale the conversations, depending on the relationship you have with your clients, you can start to add additional charts and graphs. And it's dead easy to use. You simply drag the charts and graphs over onto the report that you want to add to the report. You then choose the data set. So we're looking at actual data or forecast data. I didn't show you, I probably haven't got time in the forecasting area, but you've got that instant forecast. We've got budgets that you can build. You can then build scenarios. You can then you've got an ongoing live tracker. So that instant tracker that built when you first logged in continues to track and continues to say, based on what you're actually doing, this is where you're going to end up. All of those data sets then are able to bring into these reports. So we could do budget connected to actual data. And then we could even bring in the daily tracker, which will be different from actual data because it's using actual data to model, a bit like a driving in your car, where it says you're going along for 2 hours to get to Bristol, and then somebody breaks down in the middle of the road, and now based on your current speed it's going to take you 3 hours to get there. That's exactly what the tracker forecast is. You can choose the level of granularity you want. So in this case, if we want to drag over the P&L, again, we can just choose, do you want category level or individual account level? And then scrolling right down to the bottom, of which your heads are in the way because I'm on Zoom, going right the way down to the bottom, we've then got data set periods that we want to look at, and we just want to look at months. We'll do the last 3 months, and the chart will simply, actually clicks out. The chart will update with all of that information on. You can make it as big or small as you like. You can choose the chart or graph that you want in order to display this. There's so many options in here for firms to start with and scale at a beginning conversation, but then ultimately start to really bespoke and build out as their conversations evolve with clients. And the scheduling piece that you're talking about is exactly that. You can build these reports, they auto-populate, they can schedule, you want it to go out on the 1st of every month. It can come to you for checking, or it can go straight to the client. Most of my firms, and I don't know whether you've got feedback on this, particularly from the accountants you work with, but a lot of my clients have flash reports, like weekly cash flow flash reports that go out automatically to clients that go without being checked. And then on the flip side, they've got the kind of fixed monthly management report packs that come to them for review. They're the locked in ones before they then send it out on schedule. So,
yeah, so we've got like
here.
We've got teams that are going, they want sales information regularly. So it's going back to their sales team with their sales budgets and sales targets. So that works brilliantly for that.
exactly.
Everyone ops teams can keep track of their spend while they're on the go as well, and you're not giving them really any access to zero. They're just getting that
Exactly.
data.
There's so much more we could show because we spoke for far too long at the beginning, and I know a lot of people will be watching this on recording. So for those of you who want to see more, there's drivers, which is non-financial drivers. There's the scenarios, there's the budgets. There's all sorts of things that Paul and I didn't touch on today. But as we now hit the 3 o'clock mark, I guess I should wrap up unless there's any burning questions from anybody, and say, Paul, thank you so much for taking your time. Anybody who does have any questions, please reach out to us after it. If you're watching this away from this live event, please reach out to us. We'll be more than happy to answer them. But Paul, thank you again. Thanks to everyone for joining us, and we will see you all soon.